Hey guys, I've sort of been taking a little break lately. This is hopefully maybe my last video before I go up to bed. Trying to get over a little cold, but I just wanted to briefly mention um, Gene Gebser. I'm gonna be making a more detailed video with pictures and all that about him. But I just wanted to share with you like a cool little mind trip that he kind of puts in his book, Ever Present Origin. Um, if you're not familiar with him, Gene Gebser was this cool guy who basically said our perception of reality evolves as time goes on, as we begin to reflect more, and as things get more complex. And basically, he shows you how people think differently um, by the artwork they produce, by showing you how they see reality through art. Um, So, for instance, one of the cool story that he tells is about this medieval painter who is climbing a mountain for some reason. I guess it's one of his favorite spots in nature or something like that. He's climbing a mountain to, I guess he brought his paint tools, and he gets to the top of the mountain, and for the first time he sees or recognizes the vast space that the world was, the vast distance between points, and the immensity of nature. And he is so shocked and awed by this. He almost has like a spiritual experience. Uh, and he later writes to the bishop of the town, or of the area where he lived, basically apologizing and saying, you know, I feel like may have erred in finding awe in nature and the world over um, God's uh, over God, over the God of the Bible and of the Spirit, instead of giving divinity or attaching divinity to God, which was not of this world, which was not of space and immensity and the physical reality. Um, it was given to more of images and ideas and more of an audible sort of yeah, and he this is interesting. God was seen, reality was seen through the ears, if that makes sense. um, Images, symbols, um, and meaning was the important thing in medieval, pre-modern times. So for someone to see awe in the vast physical reality of the world was almost irreverent because it seemed to deny the uniqueness of God as symbol, God as idea, God as something that was not seen but only listened to um, through scripture, through the priests. uh, and he wrote to his, I think it was a bishop, um, saying, I don't mean to be irreverent, but there was so much beauty I had to paint it. And around that time, there was a discovery of the physical world, of perceiving reality through um, distance, through space. Um, Space was the new thing, and you basically go on this mountain with him, and the way he describes it, he gives quotes from the letter to the bishop, and I just found this to be profoundly interesting that we at some point had a totally different conception of reality, where we didn't even really think about the immensity or have much intrigue into um, the physical world as much as spatially oriented. He mentions the Greeks having some interest in it, but more about the symbols and hidden symbols in it, um, such as geometry and so on and so forth. And he also brings up, Gebser brings up the other interesting idea that that if you are uh, focusing on the spatial reality, you don't necessarily feel as unified. You know, in a way that listening, if you look at the artwork of medieval times, there wasn't an appreciation for um, physical realism. It was, you know, the 2D symbols. It was more about the ideas these things conveyed, rather than um, perceiving physical reality. So there was a great shift in perspective and understanding distance between points. If you are suddenly in immense space, if you are in the physical and you're not focusing on the images, which are more intangible, less about space and distance, more about, you know, their impact on you, then you will sort of have a deeper sense of self. You will begin to feel the distance and the difference between you and, you know, an object that's 100 miles away. And I'm sure he began to feel that too, that the smallness, that not only a smallness, um, a, a, an appreciation for who you are. You suddenly begin to differentiate yourself from this grand environment. So Gebser also mentioned that this shift in perceiving reality, which reflected in, you know, Renaissance art, um, gave birth to the sense of I-ness and individualism and other such ideas that began to be more commonly accepted. Um, the reality shifted from, you know, us as a collective to more me as a part of a collective. Um, so I just wanted to share that story with you. So I thought that was very interesting. Um, and I guess one other thing, one other example that he gives us, he describes the Mayan, not the Mayan, the Aztecs being conquered by the Spaniards, and he says, you know, the Spaniards were vastly outnumbered, and as some people say, you know, it's all due to technology and disease, but surely they would have put up a better fight, Gebser says, if that was simply the case. Um, so instead, Gebser attributes the quick, you know, conquering of the Aztec Empire as more to do with the Spaniards' sense of individualism, not necessarily in the same scope as today, but for back then there's a sort of entrepreneurship, conquering for you know, gold and sense of wealth and the physical reality. Their perception of self was bold. They're the small little group of people coming in and wiping everything out if they could. Um, the Aztecs, for the most part, didn't put up much of a fight. They thought they were gods. They were completely flabbergasted by the Spaniards coming in. So their entire perception of reality was so different than the Spaniards that when the Spaniards went and did something individually as a small group, um, they the reality of the Aztecs couldn't react in the same degree. They didn't have that perception. It blew them away. Um, and to keep this in perspective for future videos, Gebser also said that, you know, these modern times are going through their own um, limitation, the same way the Aztecs confronted a new reality that the Spaniards are bringing with them. We're being confronted with a new reality, and are we going to stare at it flabbergasted, or are we going to be able to shift our perspective and be able to see a whole new dimension? And that's the question that I guess I left off at. But I thought I would share this with you because it was really interesting. Um, so yes, thank you for listening. And please, comments and response videos are more than welcome.